Hello everyone, my name is Sofia Osipova and I'm a BBA student here at Vyše. Today I'm joined by Miss Nicole Grmelova, a professor from the Department of Business and European Law. Not only has she worked in the European Parliament, but she has also built an inspiring academic career here at Vyše. Today we will talk about her professional career, her views on business and international education, and here's some advice for future students. So, Miss Nicole, thanks a lot for joining us today. And I'd love to start by asking you a few questions about your career and experiences, and then we'll move on to some advice and a fun little quiz at the end. So the first question is, you've had experience of working as a lawyer linguist in the European Parliament. Could you tell us how you got this position, what your main responsibilities were, and what key skills this experience gave you?
Thank you for inviting me. Hello, everybody. I'll start right away answering your first question. The European Union has its own recruitment agency, which is called the European Personnel Selection Office. And this office organizes selection procedures which are open to the public, so everybody can apply if they meet the eligibility criteria and the lengths of professional experience. So I applied for the competition for lawyer linguists and I passed, and I was offered a position in the European Parliament. So my main responsibilities and main tasks included checking the admissibility of amendments that were tabled by members of European Parliament, and also conducting a legal and linguistic revision of translations that were done by translators, most of the time non-lawyers. So the idea was to make sure that the legal terminology is correct in all the EU languages. With respect to the skills that you asked about, I think this was my biggest experience so far of working in a multicultural environment, because there were 24 different linguistic revisions, and we also had to compare the wording of the legislation in different languages. So for me, this was the biggest asset. I learned to speak reasonable French, and I also learned some Dutch while staying in Brussels.
How many languages had you known before you landed the job there?
Well, to apply for the position of a lawyer linguist, you need to have the working language of 3 EU official languages. So I applied with English, German, and Spanish. I was born in Slovakia and lived there for long, so I'm also fluent in Slovak. I also speak Czech, I understand some Russian, and I learned quite a lot of French and a little bit of Dutch.
Okay.
So that's my language portfolio.
Inspiring. Where did you learn French?
Well, I learned French partially at the meetings of the European Parliament, because some of the meetings are held bilingually. You're supposed to understand the other language, but you can answer the question in English if you prefer not to answer in French.
Okay, I see. How has your work in EU institutions shaped the way you teach at Vyše? And what lessons about international cooperation and decision-making do you try to pass on to your students?
This is a very good question, because law is very different in books and in action. And what I learned inside the European Parliament is that the institution works entirely differently from what we are told in the EU textbooks. So in the EU law textbook, it would say that the European Parliament represents the interests of the EU citizens. However, in practice, you witness the huge influence of corporate lobbies who try to push their opinions into EU legislation. So there is a huge difference between the theory and the practice. And I learned that actually developing legislation and drafting legislation and adopting legislation is very much about finding a political compromise. It's always about compromise, about priorities.
What is the best way to find that compromise?
I think that it's a good idea to have all member states happy about how the final legislative output should look like, because if the member states who participate in adopting EU legislation agree, they're likely to enforce the rules. If they disagree, they're unlikely to enforce the rules, because EU rules are enforced in a decentralized way, which means that it is the national courts that apply EU law in the first instance. So we actually need the consent of the member state with the rules adopted at EU level to expect your national judges to apply that rules accordingly.
Okay, and what about why did you choose Vishay in particular for your academic career development?
Well, I have graduated from the Charles University Law School, and to be honest, I would never apply for a position there because the institution is much more old-fashioned than the Prague University of Economics and Business. And unless you are aged 50 plus, you probably won't be allowed to teach a lecture. You would be allowed to teach a seminar. So it has a much more old-fashioned approach to allowing young people to progress in their academic career. And I think this is very much the contrary at the Prague University of Economics and Business, when you're actually allowed to start teaching big lectures even after graduating from university. So this is what I actually liked very much.
Okay, I see. And why did you choose academic career path, not work in EU institution?
Well, I actually started in the private sector. When I completed my university studies, I worked in a law firm for 2 years. And I discovered that I didn't like it particularly. The salary was good, but I didn't like the nature of the work. So I switched to the university, and then I got the offer to work at the European Parliament. So I already started teaching here before going to Brussels and then coming back. And I think it probably deals with the family background, because both of my parents were university teachers, and they kept telling me since I was very, very small not to go and teach because I would be poor all my life and I will die being very poor. But I've managed to resolve the situation of buying an apartment in cash thanks to the savings that I made while working in Brussels. So I can afford to teach at a public university now because I don't have to pay up any mortgage.
I see. So teaching is just your passion, yeah?
Yeah.
But what in particular didn't you like working in a private sector?
Working in the private sector is sometimes about deceiving your clients, because at times you may not offer the cheapest solution to their business problem, but you may well have to offer them the solution which is more expensive in terms of how complicated your legal services are. And since there was a lot of pressure by the bosses, by my superiors, to offer solutions which were not particularly economic for the clients, but would be good enough, I didn't like to work in such an environment.
Okay, I see. What makes studying business and law at Vishay different from other European universities, and particularly from other universities in the Czech Republic?
I have more experience of how law is taught in the Czech Republic than how it is being taught abroad. I think it is more practically based, because students are expected to develop their business plan for pursuing, let's say, an entrepreneurial idea. And this is something that a law school would not do most of the time. So I like the interconnection between theory and practice, which is much stronger at this university than at a law school.
Okay, and how does understanding law help business students succeed in the European job market?
I think it helps them succeed in any life situation, because even if you do not decide to conduct a business, you will always have to resolve legal disputes with your neighbors, with your family, with your business, if it's national or international. So I think it is a very good background if you have an idea of international trade law, even to understand the current political issues that are going on in the world. So I think the scope of law is very huge. It expands over to politics, to economics. It's not just limited to law.
I also think that by studying law, we become more free, because we understand our rights and we can defend our rights in any situation. Because, for example, I'm from Ukraine, and there we have a lot of breachment of our rights. And so when a person knows their rules, their rights by heart, they can defend them, and it helps a lot. Yeah.
Absolutely.
What are some current global or European trends that you think students in business or international relations should follow closely, like nowadays?
I think that there is a growing role of the judiciary, of the courts, because since the development of the economy is so, let's say, digital and so progressive, the written law can never be quick enough to adapt to the huge digital shift and to the globalized environment. So most of the time it is up to the law courts to decide a dispute that cannot be basically decided based on the written rules that become outdated very quickly. So I think that nowadays the role of the judges is much bigger than it used to be in the past. And this, I believe, is a global trend, not limited to the Czech Republic or to Europe.
Okay, and what led you to choose law as your career path? And what advice would you give to students who are still exploring their own direction?
When I was a child, I didn't like injustice that I was able to see in my environment, and I thought I have to do something about it. So since I was maybe 10 years old, I knew I wanted to study law, and I never regretted this option. I actually like the studies, and I like teaching law. So I think it is very much about defending your rights and also about sharing the insider experience that you already have of applying law in practice.
Okay, and what is your favorite part in teaching?
I like students making questions. I don't like students who do not engage in any discussions, because then I'm not sure if my explanation was too complicated or if it was too boring. I actually like to receive feedback. The more questions, the better, because I know that students are listening and they're thinking about the topic, and this is very crucial for all the teachers, I believe.
Okay, and now for a little fun. Just a few quick questions to get to know you better. What is your favorite place on the Vyše campus?
I think it's the canteen, because they cook better than I do.
And your favorite dish there?
Well, I can't eat gluten, so whichever is gluten-free is my favorite dish of the day.
Okay. If you weren't a professor, what would you be?
Probably I would stay working in the European Parliament, but I like teaching much more.
Tea or coffee before lectures?
Tea. Definitely.
Morning or evening classes?
Evening classes are preferable.
Your favorite thing about Prague?
Trying to find a place that is tourist-free, like even a walk in the woods. Definitely not Wenceslas Square or Old Town Square.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Grmelova, for your time and for sharing your insights with us. And I'm sure that our viewers, especially those who are thinking of studying business or international relations, will find your experience truly inspiring. And thank you all for watching. Stay tuned for more interviews with amazing professors at Vyše.
Thank you very much for having me. Bye-bye.
Thank you.